Hey guys, Jess from Knockout Print Shop, and today I have for you my Life Compass assessment goal setting in my new 2020 Makse Life Planner. So if you don't know about Makse Life Planner, it is a new planner on the scene this year. I did do an unboxing and review of it, so you can go back and watch that. I'll link it below. And also I do have a coupon code that goes to the end of this year. So I'll link that below for 15% off. And I think that's it. All right, so let's get into it. So the Makse Life Planner is a weekly planner as well as a goal planner. So if you're into goal setting and you don't want to have two separate planners, this is a great planner to purchase so that you can have both things in one. So the Makse Life goal setting prep is a little more streamlined than some other systems like Inkwell Press's goal planner from what I've heard, as well as Power Sheets. So again, we're going to kind of talk about that as we go, and I'll show you how I did this assessment and goal setting. So first thing you're supposed to do is what she calls the Life Compass. So this is what the compass looks like. This is how we get our scores. So there is scoring of 8 statements per each of the 8 categories of your life. You rank each statement on a 1 to 10 scale, 1 being not very good at it or it's not going so well, and 10 being like you rock at it. You take that number, ranking each of these statements, add it up, divide it by 8, and you get your score. So you have your personal, fun and recreation, work and learning, relationships, health and wellness, spirituality and personal growth, financial and physical environment. So those are how she breaks life up as far as categories go. And then after you go through this scoring situation, you go back over here to this kind of life compass, life wheel thing, and you put your score onto the circle. Now, you're supposed to like fill it in. Clearly I didn't follow the instructions. I circled where I am currently and put a square where I want to be. So that's the idea. You're gonna get that score in each category. You're supposed to fill it into that line of that score, and then you circle where you want to be. Clearly I don't know how to read directions, so I just did it my way. It looks a little janky, but whatever, the purpose is still served. Okay, so my thoughts on this are, I do like this style of assessment. I think it's simple and easy to do for most people. I think I highly recommend you having a loved one do this with you as well. So maybe you go through this and you score yourself, and then maybe you ask a spouse, a friend, a family member, read the statements to them and have them assess where they think you'd fall in the continuum of 1 to 10. I think sometimes it helps to get an outside perspective and really get clear, because sometimes our own psyche is going to tell us we're doing better or worse than we actually are in a certain area. Some of these statements for me were very easy to answer. Some took me a little bit more thinking, because there's some overlap in things that impact different parts of them. Some of these things weren't relevant to me, so I just tried to do the best that I could. I think overall the 8 statements in each category are a fairly good assessment of that particular area. Let me give you an example of where I kind of got a little bit hung up. For example, family and relationships. So most of these statements, I gave myself a 10. I feel like that's an area I feel very confident in and doing well in. There was one statement out of the 8 that shifted my score. So there's a statement that says, I have a sense of community and belonging where I live, work, and play, and I gave myself a 5. And the reason this was hard was because Matt and I work at home, so we don't really have a sense of community other than ourselves, and we don't really have a community of coworkers or people we network with, vendors. Obviously we have our community here with customers, but that to me feels a little different than what this is trying to get at. And because we've been moving so much in the past few years, that one of our areas that we're struggling with is feeling a sense of community belonging where we live. So that kind of pulled my score down just a tad, but that kind of overlaps with personal and overlaps with just the style of work we have. So some of these statements were a little hard for me to like nail down what I should give myself a number on. I would say if you come across that situation where something feels like it doesn't apply to you, you're not really sure how to interpret it, just kind of do the best you can, give yourself a score and let it be, because most likely once you do the average, you're going to come out somewhere where you would assume you would. So I think another way I wanted to say to use this is once you go through the process, you score yourself, And then you go into the actual breaking down of your goals. If you're getting hung up on what your goal should be in a certain area, I think you can use some of these statements to figure out which kind of more nuanced part of that category you're getting your roadblocks are. And I'll go over that as we get into the weekly steps. So I think you can use this assessment to help you also create goals and action steps, not only assess your life. Okay, I think I've said enough about that. So basically I went through this, and just to kind of show you guys where I'm at, most of my areas, I've been doing a lot of work in certain areas of my life over the past couple of years. So I feel pretty good and scored myself pretty high. Health and wellness, that for me is a 10. I've been in the health and fitness industry for a long time. And as far as my habits, my eating habits, my sleep, my mental and emotional health, I'm pretty good there. I think in that whole category, the only ones I kind of went down from a 10 were feeling strong in mind, body, and heart, just because of the fact that I was dealing with some GI issues over the past year, and healing from any trauma or stress I've experienced, again, kind of related to those health issues. So for the most part, things that I have control over, my eating, my mental health and physical health, my exercise routine, sleep, I feel good. So that I gave a 10. So that one doesn't obviously need to go any higher, but I did set goals in that area. Spirituality and personal growth, having the fact that I've been a life coach for a long time, and in that world of self-improvement, I have my master's in clinical psychology. This is kind of ingrained in who I am, to seek out self-awareness, understanding other people, things like that. The spirituality piece for me doesn't strongly apply. I'm a quote-unquote spiritual person, I guess, in my own sense. But it's not an area of life I really focus on. It doesn't feel like it's lacking in my life. So this one I just kind of like gave myself a 10 because most of those things I was like, yeah, I'm on it with that. Now, financially, I have done, again, a lot of work in the past couple of years, more than a couple of years, on this area. So for most of these, I gave myself a 9 or a 10, these statements. There was 2 areas that I struggle with, regardless of the actual progress that I've made financially. So the tangible progress, being debt-free, saving, doing all of that is good. I gave myself a 7, and then Matt gave me a 5, and I have a healthy relationship with money. So this is one of the things where it's kind of like a money mindset thing. Even though we have financial security and for the most part financial freedom, not totally financially independent yet, but I still struggle with the messaging that like all of a sudden money's going to be gone, money's hard to come by. I grew up in a family that has a lot of that struggling money mindset. So my mindset is kind of where I'm lacking, despite the fact that my behaviors aren't. And then my ability, I believe in my ability to acquire wealth. I gave myself a 5 here, not because I don't think I'm resourceful and can acquire wealth, but I still, again, have this block around, that mindset of the challenge and the difficulty when it comes to making money. So behaviorally, I feel pretty confident and good, but then there's those 2 kind of more mental pieces that I struggle with. So I gave myself an 8.6, 9. So I'd like to get that up to a 9 this year. And I think that's just going to be doing some more reflecting, reading on money mindset, just kind of figuring out what I can do to start to shift the way I think about things. But again, oddly, it doesn't affect how I financially behave. So there's that. Physical environment was another one that doesn't really cause me any issues. My home feels fine. I feel comfortable in my space. I feel like my home is decluttered and clean, and it's just Matt and I and the dog, and we have a good cleaning routine and system, and we have a small home, so it's easy to manage. I think the only 2 things I rated below a 10 where I enjoy spending time in my personal spaces. Our apartment is not huge, but it's not small. And because we're in an apartment, we don't put a lot of time into like making this the most homey place, because we plan on moving and buying a home. And then there are physical areas where I can go to recharge and experience comfort. And I would say that's mostly true. But again, this is not what we feel like is our home, so we're not really cultivating that feeling. So I gave myself a 9.8. Again, this is fine as far as I'm going into 2020. The biggest thing that's going to change is buying a house, which will shift that. So let's go to the areas where I struggle. That would be work, fun, and personal. So This is going to probably sound a little bit odd, but the work section was really hard for me. And let me explain. Obviously, we own and operate, and I run the print shop, and I do enjoy it. It gives us, freedom in our lives. I enjoy being self-employed. I've been self-employed most of my life. I feel like it'd be very weird to have a boss. But the challenge is when I sold my gym in 2018, I did not think about how not having a role as a service provider was going to impact the way I felt about my work. So obviously we sell a product, and I do try to cultivate a sense of community here on our YouTube channel and our Facebook group and my interactions with our customers via email, and that feeds that a little bit. But I'm realizing now, after about 18 months of kind of, self-discovery and thinking, that I struggle to feel fulfilled in my work when I'm not doing something that I feel allows me to use my skills of coaching, communication, connection, helping being part of somebody's transformational journey. Like, that's kind of ingrained in who I am. It's what I went to school for. So right now, I feel very good about my role in Knockout Print Shop and what that does and what we've created. I still feel like there's something lacking for me, for my sense of personal fulfillment when it comes to work and learning. So I scored that pretty low. So I think at the end of the day, I got down to a 6, and I would like to move that up to an 8. And that's going to take a lot of kind of more self-discovery, more trying things to figure out what I need that to look like to feel better in that area. The other one I'm not very good at is fun and recreation. I'm definitely somebody that enjoys working. I enjoy being productive. While I have hobbies and interests, Matt and I like to work, and we work a lot, and we are also very frugal, so we don't spend a lot of money on vacations and hobbies and things like that because we've been so focused on becoming debt-free and now going to buying a home. So we struggle with this, and we do make time for date nights and going out and exploring our local area, but we totally suck at like taking time off and vacations. I could go into more explanation about why there's multiple reasons why that's challenging for us, but we basically aren't very good at that. So I gave myself on average like between a 5 and a 6. I would like to get that up to an 8. And last but not least is personal. Gave myself around an 8 for that after going through the questions here, the statements, and my basic needs are taken care of. I do feel like I have a positive outlook on life. I'm, like the statement says, I give myself grace with my limits and imperfections. I don't mind spending time alone. So a lot of these I did really well. The two that I struggle with are feeling fulfilled and hobbies and interests. And I tend to feel fulfilled when I'm working. So this kind of overlaps what I was talking about before. And then again, just the hobbies and interests thing. So we're kind of, again, and this is probably partly why we struggle, is we've been in like limbo for the past 18 months. When we closed my gym, sold our house, and moved to Raleigh last year in 2018, we were like kind of starting over. We had no sense of community, knew nobody, and we work from home. We don't have kids, so we kind of felt isolated. And then we decided to move to Tennessee, so it's like we're starting over again. So we're really looking forward to all this kind of intertwines to feeling like we are not planted. And I think once we get planted and we buy a home, that we will start to build a sense of community and plant roots. It'll help kind of all of these areas. So that's my story. Okay, so long story short, I did not think I was going to talk that much about that, so hopefully that was helpful to you guys to kind of hear my process. But basically what you do, go through this, point it, circle it on here and figure out where you want to go next. And then we go into the next page, which is her intentions page here. So this is talking more about not maybe specific goals yet, but we're talking about kind of the feelings, the overarching theme of what you're looking to do in 2020, who you want to become, how you want to show up. And she's got some questions here prompting you on that, like what could I use more of in my life this year? And I just kind of mused based on words like community, connection, collaboration, purpose, a platform for my voice, answers, direction. So I just kind of like free associated there. What could you use less of? Noise, confusion, isolation, things feeling forced. What characteristics would you like to nurture? Answered that. Speaking, coaching, decisiveness, honesty, intelligence, creativity. 3 habits I want to cultivate this year. That I'm leaving blank. I've done a lot of work on my habits in the past couple of years, and I'm feeling really good about those, and I'm not sure what I want to nail down as like my main 3 for the year. For me, this tends to evolve as the year goes on, and I see what I need at any given time. This year I will be more, I said, outgoing, helpful, action-based and practice-based. I'll do less worrying and figuring out. I'll give myself grace for, left that blank. I'm not too hard on myself about stuff, so I didn't think that was super applicable to me. I'll let go of doing things that don't work. So that is definitely something I want to work on. Instead of forcing these habits and these things that are supposed to be life-changing, just let it go, try it. If it doesn't work, let it go. I could talk more about that, but we'll leave that for another day. I'll embrace free time in the unknown. So again, Matt and I tend to be like work, work, work. So we both struggle with this, and it's like I need to embrace the idea of free time. I also need to embrace the idea that creativity is then you need free time. You need time that doesn't necessarily feel productive to be creative and to express yourself. So there's that. So I ended up with the word for 2020 is freedom. I do like this activity. I thought that was kind of cool to have this kind of like guidepost word to anchor kind of your behaviors and your choices for the year. I really want to focus on freedom, financial freedom, freedom with obviously feeling strong and healthy, freedom with expressing my voice, finding a platform for that, free to just choose things that are good for me, just the sense of freedom that I can gain by living a life that feels good to me. And then you kind of write what the word means to you. Okay. Kind of trying to go through this as fast as I can so this video is not 17 hours long. She gives you some guidance here on writing goals, kind of what is ideal versus not so ideal when it comes to framing these sentences about your goals, being more specific and short and measurable. She doesn't call them SMART goals, but kind of the same kind of thing, focused on being very specific versus general. So if you have, challenges in setting and framing these sentences when it comes to writing your goals down, this is a good little kind of reference point to craft the sentences more positively and productively. Then she again kind of goes into different things about committing to your goals, setting your annual goals, monthly goals, weekly goals. So if you need some more guidance on this process, you can definitely follow through her step-by-step process. I glanced at this a little bit as I was going through this, but for me, I didn't feel like I needed much direction. I just kind of did it the way I wanted to, and it did align with a lot of the steps she recommended. Okay, so here is what I did with my annual goals, but let me show you first what happened. So what happened was I was sitting here with these blank pages, which I am not a blank page person. And I was like, this is a lot of space to fill up. There's no way I have this many goals in each area. This is overwhelming, and I don't even know where to start. I knew which areas needed more attention, and I had some ideas of how I wanted to show up in those areas, so more like intentions. But when it came down to like really what do I want to accomplish in this next year, I was like, I don't even know where to start. So I'm like, okay, stop looking at this piece of paper and figure out a way to get the stuff out of your head before you have to categorize it. So enter brain dump. So what I did was I started to just write anything that came to mind, regardless of the category, the things I might want to do, achieve, focus on for the year. So I went through and just no particular order, no rhyme or reason. I just started writing stuff down. This was a lot easier for me than having to go through this process of going, okay, here's my personal goal, here's my recreation goal. That my brain was like, not happening. So this was a lot more freeing to do. Now, before I did any of this, I went through this big process that I don't necessarily think was helpful, but what I did was I kind of like wrote down an intention for each, which was a little helpful because some of that transferred to here. I started to brainstorm again, but I kept trying to do it by category and it was messing me up. Then I'm like, well, I'm going to write down my 5 goals that are my main goals. But then I'm like, okay, this isn't really helping me either. So then I started to just kind of like muse, like free associate about my intentions and what I wanted. And that kind of helped. But I think the whole thing was like a process and it's totally fine. And I think the thing to remember when you approach any of these things, whether you're using Makse Life, Power Sheets, Inkwell Press, something else, is use this as a framework, but at the end of the day, do what works for you. If you need a blank piece of paper just to write things down, then do that. Don't feel like, if you feel like you're struggling and you're getting stuck on one part, instead of trying to continually force it, step back and literally, I would highly recommend just like free associating till you come up with things. The other thing I would highly recommend, if you're somebody like me that gets stuck in their head, so journaling isn't great for me, and things where I have to constantly go deeper and self-analyze, I will start to just keep going and keep going. I need to verbalize things. So if you have a significant other, family member, or friend that's willing to kind of like hash this out verbally with you, that can also be helpful. And Matt and I did some of that. He kind of helped me with some of the assessment and different things. Okay, so I brain dumped here, and then I made my little key of which mild liner highlighters somewhat resemble each color category of the Makse Life areas of life. So I put one of our little stickers down, found a color of mild liner that matched pretty darn close, and then I went through and highlighted each one based on the area I think it was relevant to. You can see a few of them, I'm like, well, that's kind of two different things, but I didn't care. I'm just like, okay, highlight with both, and literally just let it be. This then, what I did was I took it and I put it into categories here. So once I had them all highlighted, I broke it down here. I also had, prior to that, written kind of an intention statement or like an overarching goal for each area. So for instance, family and relationships. For me, this is more social than it is family or anything like that. So I just wrote cultivate friendship, which is something I've been working on for the past few months. What's another one? Like physical environment, don't have too much going on there. So maintain a clean, organized, simple home. That's just a continuation of how I run our, how I maintain our home, things like that. So that is what I did. And I kind of wrote one of those for each of these areas. Then I did the brain dump, highlighted it, and then I put things in. And then I thought, you know what? I don't need this to be pretty. I don't need this to be perfectly mapped out. I don't need to reserve this to one goal or 10 goals. They don't even need to be called goals. Maybe they're just things, and just let myself have more freedom in doing this. So what I did then was wrote down everything that was highlighted on my brain dump and put it in that category. So right here, you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 individual things. Am I going to do all of this probably this year? No, that's probably insane. But I'm like, okay, I can write all this down. Some of these are overlapping. Some of these can't happen until we buy a house. Some of these are tied to other things happening, but at least I have a place to put all of those goals. So, and then what I did was I took our little, so let's see, I took the scalloped guys, and that was the sticker I used for my intention. And then I took these little double arrow guys to indicate which of these items on this list I wanted to focus on. So for personal, it's reduce screen time. Some of these other ones like gardening, homesteading, permaculture, compost, that can't happen until we buy a house. I do some patio gardening, but it's not ideal. We are recycling already, but I just want to remind myself to continue with that. So right now, the first thing I want to focus on is getting back to decreasing screen time. I definitely feel better when I'm not like obsessively on social media, and I had practiced that for a few months this past year, but I want to really get this to become an effortless automated habit with my limits. Right down here, you write how reaching this goal will improve my life, so I wrote a statement about that. Same thing here, fun and recreation, craft a life that invites rest and adventure and fun. Wrote all the things down that I would like to do more of, and the first thing I put was local adventures. Obviously January and February aren't the warmest months in mostly any state except for very, very southern states. And because, again, we're kind of frugal, minimalists when it comes to our finances, we try to be really mindful about spending when it comes to fun. We need to loosen up a little bit about that, but doing local things can make that a little bit more affordable. Some of these other ones are a little more in depth, cost a little bit more, and maybe will be better when the weather warms up, so I'll tack those other ones later. Work and learning, wrote down everything that could potentially bring me more feelings of contribution and fulfillment and feed that part of me that thrives on the work with other people. Wrote all of that down and have my first one here again with that arrow. Same thing I did here for relationships, cultivate friendship, And this is kind of the overarching thing, but then when I break it down to, like, let's say Matt and I's marriage, I put dates with Matt, which we already do that once a week, but I just wanted to write that down. That's important to me. Matt does all the cooking, but I want to start participating in that more because I know for him, he's really good at cooking and it's really easy for him because he's been in that role. I've been the one that, like, cleans, but I would like to start doing more of that to make that role a little bit more equal. And then friend dates, that's my other thing. So health and fitness, this is again an area that I've focused most of my life on, and I just had to maintain my commitment to a healthy lifestyle and building strength. I have some medical thing, put doctor's appointments here. So let's say you already have your health and fitness down. You could maybe use this as like a maintain medical appointment, be on top of medical appointments and write down all the ones that you need to get annually. And this could be your place to house those things. Or you could kind of do it in columns like I did. So I had medical, physical, and lifestyle. So my physical ones were press a 24 kilogram kettlebell, just kind of a strength goal for me. I'd like to focus on handstands and trying to learn how to do that. And then even though Matt and I work out, do our kettlebell training 3 to 4 times a week, and we typically, especially when the weather's warmer, we walk outside 2 to 3 times a week. One thing I'd like to do more of is getting up out of my desk a few times a day to do some mobility and stretching. When I was obviously working at the gym and I was on my feet all the time, this was easier to get in more daily movement. Now that I'm sitting at a desk all the time, it's a little bit harder. So I want to work on that. So I just got the little arrow. And then sleeping in my rise time and bedtime, I want to keep doing that from what I've been doing this past year. Spirituality and growth, I just kind of kept that at reading because most of the books I read are based around self-development. So I'm like, that's kind of a category that doesn't need too much attention, but I'll continue my reading. Finances, buy a house, that's going to happen probably Q2, so I'm not really too focused on that other than looking at houses. Focus on YNAB and my budget, which is related to that. In physical environment, I did not come up with any goals because I don't really have any, and I just let that be okay, just to kind of keep the order in our home that we have. Okay, we're 25 minutes in, guys. This is going to be well longer than I thought. I'm trying to talk fast, but also not be like jumbling my words. Okay, so that's your annual goals. I didn't do my vision board yet. Then we get into January. I've already put in some color-coded labels for appointments and things that are relevant to those categories. Then we get into monthly goals. So for monthly goals, I used our little dots, color-coded dots, and just put a dot next to each one of the things. Most of these areas have one thing, like reduce screen time by following my limits. So this is just kind of, okay, what are you gonna do in this month? This is my daily goal. Plan one local adventure, start online fitness program that I'm going to be coaching, cook dinner 4 times. Again, these are just like the general things. Daily reading, maintain cleaning routine, YNAB daily, map out my financial goals for 2020, my medical thing I have to have done, maintain my routines, and daily movement breaks. So these are the big things. Obviously, a few of them have multiple stuff, but that one's more like a to-do than I don't know, however you want to define goal. I guess it's the same thing. Then we go into notes and reflections and weekly action steps. So I didn't really use this page, I realized. I felt like, again, I was reflecting kind of as I was going through this process, but I probably could have used this page for something. And then we go into weekly action steps. So for that particular week, the first week of the year. So again, use the dots. I said follow screen time limits daily, which is I'm only allowed to be on my phone from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Finalize what one local adventure we're going to pick. This may end up being a weekly thing, and we'll see how I make that happen. This is work, finalize month 1 program. So again, I'm launching a group fitness program online, and I need to finalize the programming and make sure everything is done that week because the next week it starts. Cook dinner 1 time, maintain my rise time and bedtimes, do a daily movement break, just 1. I need to map out the specifics of this because I feel if I'm like, oh, just do a daily movement break. This is, I think, where people get hung up is they come up with this goal, but they don't tie it to another habit that's already there and it's not specific. So truly, I need to give this a little bit more thought before this week occurs and say, I'm going to do a daily movement break at, 1:30 before we make lunch or something like that, so that it's tied to something else. Read daily, YNAB daily, and again, I don't have a physical environment goal, so left that blank. And you know, some to-dos come up that need to get done that particular week as it gets closer. So I did this all in the horizontal, even though most likely I'll be using the classic or the vertical. So you can kind of see I put my habits here, and that's like as far as I got, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna try using the horizontal. And then I was looking at it and looking at stickers. I'm like, there's no way I can do this yet. Like, I need to go back to my vertical version of the Makse Life, because when I'm transitioning off my Inkwell Press, I need something that's a little bit less different. And this layout's obviously different than the Inkwell Press Classic. So what I did then is I took so I probably will rewrite all of these things in my Makse Life vertical as well, but let me just show you what I did here. So then obviously we have the goals here, and then go to that. I'll probably again rewrite this in the vertical, but I did put my habits that are related to my goals here: wake by 6 a.m., bed by 10, read, movement break, and YNAB. So those goals are right here. Our little dot stickers do fit that space, that size. So if you want to color code that and use that, you can, or if you can just want to X them off. And I have the beginnings of a spread, but this is too far in advance to get any more detailed than what I have on here. So that is my process of going through the Makse Life goal system and setting my annual goals, monthly goals, and first week of the new year's goals. Overall, I think the system is very digestible. It's not super overwhelming. I think the assessment is very useful for multiple reasons. Obviously, you kind of get this this score that helps you really think about specifically how much better you want to be, for lack of a better word, in that area, and give it a numerical value, which I think is valuable. The other thing I think that's good about this assessment that I can expand on really quick before I make this an hour-long video is if you're feeling like there's an area here and you gave yourself, let's say health and fitness, you give yourself a 5 based on these statements. You're like, well, I don't know what my goal should be. How do I break this down to monthly, weekly? Well, look at these statements and see which one you gave yourself a lower score to. So maybe you gave yourself a lower score to, I eat well and drink plenty of water. So let's say you're like, well, I drink plenty of water, but my eating could use some work. Then I would say, okay, well, maybe your main monthly goal or intention would be like, my intention is to, improve my nutrition. My intention is to become a person that eats a nourishing, diet or something like that. And then you get more nuanced. Okay, well, what does that look like? What would a person that is healthy, active, and eats a nourishing diet, what would they do? And that's where you can start to break down these bigger goals into nuanced little weekly action steps that become systems that become who you become. So long story short, guys, if you have any questions about taking these categories and breaking them down into monthly goals, weekly goals, action steps, daily habits, let me know. Makse Life she's going to be running, if you run the pre-order bundle, she's going to run a Facebook coaching group. I think the first month or 4 weeks of the new year. I'm also considering doing a group there on Facebook as well, a little paid group where I kind of help you guys break down your goals. We have accountability, we have check-ins and things like that. And you don't have to use Makse Life, you can use whatever planner. Or if you need help, you want to shoot me an email, you want coaching, or you just have a question, and if I can answer it very easily, I'm happily respond back either in a comment below or an email. Anyways, sometimes it helps to have a little coaching trying to figure this out. Okay, this video is way too long, but let me know if you guys have any questions. Did you find this helpful? Are you using Makse Life? Are you using Inkwell Press? Are you using Power Sheets? Do you hate goal setting? Do you enjoy goal setting? What are some of your goals? Let me know any thoughts on goals below. And I think my next video will be on the Inkwell Press Planner goal setting and how these two compare. So I will see you guys in the next one.